Redfall is conflicted. It has a collection of ideas, many of them good, but they're frequently paired with other mechanics and ideas that directly conflict with them. During the marketing of Redfall, they made a big deal that you could play it solo or co-op, and that it was a full experience in both ways. And to some degree, I think that's what did it in. Myself, Aiscool, and two of the other nobodies, David and Ty, played Redfall on release. We had a good time. For everything I enjoyed about the game, there was something that just didn't seem right. And I think a lot of it comes down to Arcane Studio crafted some masterpieces with Dishonored and Prey, designed around single-player action. Both of them were delightful immersive sims that focused on giving you multiple ways to solve objectives in creative and interesting ways. Whether it was breaking into a house, accessing a security panel, sneaking up on an enemy, so on and so forth. A core part of their design philosophy was we want you to discover multiple solutions to the problems we put in front of you. And so a lot of heart and love went into their level design, crafting scenarios with multiple solutions, and giving the users constant opportunities to discover additional ways to use the abilities and weapons they're given. But it's a lot different to do that in a single-player environment than it is a multiplayer environment. And on top of that, the fundamental nature of an open world game requires there to be a lot more content that gets less intentional and handcrafted development attached to it. Early on, one of the things that exemplified this most of all that was in conflict with the core play philosophy was the chimneys. You see, early in the game, they like to tell you there are multiple ways to approach problems. There's a fire station you're breaking into where you can sneak around and pick a lock, kill the enemies and bust your way in, or you can go through the roof. Again, you see what the developers wanted this to become, but because of the restrictions of a multiplayer open world game, and I assume project management not being on the same page, their opportunity for immersive sim type gameplay reduced to almost nothing. In that scenario in the fire station, my partners went around to the left to do open combat, and I was going to sneak around to the back and pick the lock. Well, what happened is I snuck past one enemy and they killed two enemies, and we met at the back door and just walked in. And so while we were hoping to go in and find two interesting ways to infiltrate the building, we just got funneled into the same entrance. The scenario that was supposed to set up the fact that there are multiple interesting ways to address problems completely broke that illusion and told me most of the problems would be linear and arbitrary. Now, going to an example I ran into with Chimney, we found this house that looked interesting. I don't exactly remember what it was, but something caught the other guy's attention about the house and they decided we wanted to get in. Well, after looking all around, we couldn't find any reasonable entrances to it. No doors to pick, no windows to break and jump in. So I went on the roof thinking, hey, they told us we can pick doors, we can find accesses and roofs, we can find multiple ways to get in buildings. So I go up there and I start looking around and I get to a chimney. Well, I look down the chimney and to my disgust, I see roof texture down the chimney. In the game that they encourage you to approach problems from every angle, at least by their tutorial text, their assets aren't even prepared for you to look at them from every angle, so they clearly didn't expect you to carry through on that. I knew it was a long shot, but I was thinking maybe I can drop down a chimney, and it's like, no, they didn't even want you looking down the chimney. So between the incident at the fire station, where we all ended up just walking in through the same door, and the incident with the chimney, that kind of blew my expectations for having multiple approaches matter. And that's a bummer. Prey was one of my favorite games of all time, and that was one of the big things I was looking forward to in this. And now I realize it's not going to be a meaningful part of gameplay in the moments where it's accessible. It's going to be tokenized and relatively useless. Now, there are things about the game that I like. I think the biggest general critique of the game is there's no one thing in the game that really stands out. Now, on a positive note, I did like the three abilities that each of the heroes we had. We were using Jacob, the sniper or assassin, Layla, the psychokinetic person, and Dev, the researcher. While none of the skills were revolutionary, they worked. I do think the thing that stands out about them is that they were designed with teamwork in mind. Obviously, this is an attempt to be an evolution on the whole Borderlands concept. And the big place it deviates from that, besides really bad guns, is the fact that each character has 3 skills instead of just 1. But the cool thing about everyone's second skill is that it's intentionally meant to be a teamwork skill. Layla sets out a construct of an elevator that lets everybody jump, either to new heights or for a different positioning in a fight. And Dev throws down a teleporter that once he teleports, any of his teammates can follow him through that same teleportation. And then Jacob's second ability gives him wall hacks, and it applies to everyone. So between the movement, exploration, and the wall hacks, the skills gave a really good sense of working together when you use them that way. I think their well-chosen skills, rather than being a highlight, kind of shines a light on the rest of the game that just came up lacking. In contrast to the abilities, the guns felt very vanilla and stale. Yes, this is a looter shooter, so your guns need to be the highlight of the experience. But in the hours that we've played so far, there hasn't been a single gun I've picked up that's made me feel powerful. It didn't change my playstyle other than the fact that I may be going from a pistol to a sniper to an assault rifle or a shotgun. Even the rare guns we picked up, there was nothing special about them that made them unique over the others. They do have special perks attached to them, but it usually comes down to, oh, it has extra ammo in its clip, or it deals a little extra damage, and stuff that doesn't impact the gameplay feel in any way, other than doing more damage. And this is an area I think that they had an opportunity to do something really cool. I really feel like special and rare guns should genuinely impact how you approach the game. In a looter shooter with class-based characters, you have such a great opportunity to have your weapons interact with your skills. And you wouldn't need a lot of these special functions. What if you had a gun that all of a sudden let you shoot your allies to heal them? Or two of the characters we played had great mobility options with the teleporter and the elevator. What if you had a weapon that, whenever you were airborne, its bullets exploded, doing area of effect damage instead of single target? Or maybe even a weapon that ignores walls. This would help you leverage Jacob's ability to see through walls. And they wouldn't need a ton, maybe 10, 20 in the entire game, but getting a gun with one of these perks would fundamentally change how you approach each challenge. And with the money thrown at this game, I feel like that wouldn't have been that hard of an ask. There were no wow factors in this. And when you're talking about a looter shooter, the special abilities on your gun is something I expect to be a wow factor. I was really disappointed that it wasn't. And I just see so many places that this game is just at utter conflict with itself, either in its storytelling or its graphics design or its confusion about what kind of game it is. I mean, we're talking about guns, so let's look at the menu. This is a looter shooter. We're going to be comparing guns constantly, and you can do that in the menu. You select one and then you hover over the gun you want to compare it to. The way that this screws it up, though, is when you move your cursor around, the location of the comparison boxes shift. So your eyes can't even quickly track which guns are better than the one you're comparing it to. I found myself having a really hard time navigating this comparison system. And in a looter shooter where all you do is compare guns and take the one with the bigger green number, clarity in your menu is kind of important. Anyways, menus aside, another place of self-conflict. And again, it's something that I think is really good, but the way it was implemented is really bad. So one of the ways they like to give you a sense of the world in that is through environmental notes or talking to people. But frankly, that's a single player activity, and that's part of the problem. This game was designed to be played as a single player or as a multiplayer. And having these scattered journals around the world are great for a solo experience. I loved them in Prey. I would sit and read all the computer terminals and the random notes left by people. And when implemented well, that's great. But I'm here to play with friends, so if I want to sit and read a note, I'm holding everybody up. And I want to play this game with my friends, but I also want to experience the story too. But there's not a good way to do both. They wrote the story and they did the world building, but they didn't take into consideration that I'd be playing the game with people. Likewise, there's all the lengthy dialogues through all the people. You can go around your home base and talk to all these different partners you get. Let's introduce our different characters one at a time so we can all meet them together, rather than in this free-for-all method. On top of it, mission select is actually done in this same building. Upstairs, there's a table where someone can look at and select a mission. Ideally, they would just be able to pick it. Again, the single-player experience is conflicting with the multiplayer design. In order for you to select a mission, all players have to be upstairs by the table, which there's no reason to need that. Borderlands didn't need to do that a decade ago. Some of these design decisions were just fundamentally flawed. Once you're done in the base, you head out and do a mission, and each of the players can go anywhere you want on the entire map. So there's a sense of openness and freedom. But before you ever get a real opportunity to consider doing that, they introduce a mechanic where they encourage you to stay together. So here it again, it's constantly conflicting with itself. They're like, here's the world, all of you can go wherever you want, but now we want you to stay together. And the mechanic or the incentive is really quite pointless. If you complete objectives close to your teammates, they gain friendship or whatever. And if your friendship is high enough, you'll get extra dialogue in a multiplayer game that you don't care about because you're talking with your friends. So again, we have this system that one encourages you to spread out, one encourages you to stay together, saying you can play the game however you want, but this is how we expect you to do it, and here's a reward that you don't care about. And there seems to be a complete void of understanding of player motivation in some of these decisions. Now, my intent isn't to sit here and critique the game, it's to look at where it had two good ideas that are in conflict with each other, and they tried to make them work together. But that's not how it should be done. You need to have focus to create an intentional experience, and you can't put everything into one game. Otherwise, as they've seemed to have managed, you'll walk away satisfying nobody. People who wanted the multiplayer experience will be bogged down by the single player things. And the single players are probably just playing because they've played too long to refund the game, and they feel like they might as well finish it since they dropped their $70 on it. And that way they can at least get story. They did something interesting with the story. So each character narrates cutscenes that happen in between different missions and loading opportunities. And I think something they did that's really cool for a multiplayer experience is that each player sees a cutscene that's narrated by their character. And so you get slightly different perspectives on the mission at hand. And I think that's cool, and that's an encouragement to replay the game with different characters. The problem is the rest of the game doesn't seem to back up like it's going to reward playing with multiple characters very well. And so I see these slivers of really great ideas that just had extremely flawed execution because I assumed the development team was trying to tick boxes they weren't that passionate about. Or the design scope just got so on a hand that whoever oversaw it didn't make the cuts they needed to. Like cosmetics. Like, this is a first-person game where you don't even see your character. And right from the get-go, they're like, oh, you can customize all these skins on your guns and you can change your character's outfit. They spent more time explaining how to change your outfit than they did how to sell and buy and understand your gun stats. A total bizarre priority alignment. I'm not going to talk about the bad AI because I'm sure you've heard that. I'm not going to talk about the console frame rates. Overall, with my experience with Redfall, it's an okay game. Depending on what your money's worth to you, it might be worth to do it. It's not as bad as a lot of people are making it seem. But on the other hand, there's nothing that makes it stand out as a great game. It works. And not like it works great, but it works, it functions, it goes from point A to point B. So if you don't go in with great expectations, but you just want to go in and have some fun shooting vampires with your friends, yeah, it can be a good time. I'm enjoying it so far. I'm actually really enjoying the dumb stake mechanic that you have to kill vampires with. So for vampires, you have to damage them, and then they have a moment where they stop moving because stunned, and then you run up to them with whatever gun you have, stab it in them because you have stakes on the end of all your rifles, and then they die because you kill vampires with stakes. If you miss your window, they come back at full health and you have to kill them again. So there are some stakes to missing that. But fundamentally, I actually enjoyed that mechanic. They even have some fun weapons that deal directly with vampires. There's a UV emitter where you're shooting essentially a sunlight at vampires, and it doesn't damage humans, but it does extra damage to the vampires. Or there's a stake launcher where you're literally launching stakes at a distance. So no, I'm not going to give Redfall a glowing recommendation, but if you like shooters and you're looking for something new to try with your friends, go for it. I don't regret my purchase yet, and I definitely see there's opportunity for some good fights and encounters later in the story mode. So if they do some things with cool boss vampires later, I think that might make some memorable moments. Anyways, when it comes down to it, Redfall is just a conflicted game. A studio that I loved got stuck developing a game with requirements that didn't fit into the game that they were making. I'm blaming Bethesda for this, not Arcane. So how was your experience with Redfall? Did you get it or did you pass? I'm Aiscool, thanks for watching.